Hello and welcome to Marriage for Better for Worse. I'm Cisco Cotto with our host, Dr. Robert Moeller. This is the program where we answer your questions on marriage. Tonight we are live, so anytime throughout the program, you can pick up your phone and call the number you see right there on the screen and ask Pastor Bob your question on marriage. That number is 888-691-1075. And we'll take questions as soon as you call in with them. It's so great to be with you, Pastor Bob.
Great to be with you, Cisco. Looking forward to another evening.
Wonderful to know that we have so many people out there who have these questions about marriage and are just hoping that they can get someone to give them some answers.
We consider it a real privilege, even a sacred privilege, to be able to share God's Word with people that are struggling or have issues or questions.
Now, as we've mentioned before, some of our programs this season are taped with viewers who we've prearranged to call in during these taped programs. But every third week, we are live, like tonight. So anyone can call in immediately with their questions. There's the number again on your screen, 888-691-1075. Our topic for tonight is about abuse, but not physical abuse. We're going to be talking about that in about a month or so. This week, we're talking about verbal abuse. Now, that's something that both men and women have been equally guilty of, haven't they, Pastor?
Well, it's possible for either one to be abusive verbally because it just takes someone willing to use their words to inflict harm on another person, and you have abuse in its formative stages.
It just takes a little bit of anger, and then that anger brought out by either a man or a woman can be damaging.
People can, either a man or a woman can use their words to the words to wound. Yeah. That was easy for me to say. Yeah.
As we get started here tonight with your questions, I want to remind you that Dr. Moeller is not a licensed psychologist, and therefore he doesn't offer psychological advice. However, he does have an extensive pastoral and counseling background, so he's well qualified to offer practical and spiritual counsel using the Bible as a source of direction and wisdom. Let's get started tonight with an email, and this email comes to us from Sandra in Livermore, California. Sandra writes, "Dear Pastor Bob, I've been divorced for 8 years, and my boyfriend has been divorced for almost 20 years. I love him and hope to marry him one day. However, after 4 years, he still can't say he loves me in return. Am I wasting my time and investing my heart and life in a relationship that is bound to fail?"
Well, whether it's bound to fail or not, I'm not sure I can say that with certainty, but it does sound like this has gone much longer in terms of a one-sided relationship where you feel a strong love for him and a desire to express it, and he can't say it to you. After 4 years, I would have to say there's definitely a problem with avoidance. You know, one of the hallmarks of a healthy relationship is security rather than avoidance. It's where we are able to say that we care about others and enjoy having them say that they care about us. You know, God doesn't hesitate at all to say that he loves us. When in John 3:16 it says, "For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him will not perish but have everlasting life." And then at the baptism of Jesus, we learn that the heavens opened, a dove came down, the Holy Spirit, and these words were heard from the mouth of the Father. "This is my Son whom I love. With him I'm well pleased." You know something? It's the sign of masculine strength. It's the sign of masculine maturity. It's the sign of character to be able to say the words, "I love you," to someone close in your life. I can't tell you what to do. You have to make your own decision. But in my mind, 4 years is more than enough time for someone to be able to say, "I love you." It may very well be time for you to move on, to learn what you can from this relationship. But in your next relationship, seek someone who can be reciprocal in affirming their love.
After 4 years of not being able to say "I love you," I wonder if there's some hurt there in his background. I mean, there's obviously something buried deeply there.
There's a strong possibility, Cisco, he never heard those words in his life, and they were never offered to him, at least in the right way. And sometimes what you've never experienced, you can't give. And it sounds in this case like she's in that type of situation. But you know, it's not her job to fix him. It's not her job to save him or rescue him. God can do that. But I really am concerned if she hasn't heard an I love you in 4 years, imagine if they get married. How long will she wait to hear it again?
Well, thank you very much, Sandra, for your email. Let's go to our first caller of the night. This is Kimberly in Crest Hill, Illinois. Hi, Kimberly. You're on with Pastor Bob. What's your question?
Yes, I'm actually going through a breakup right now, and he chose to leave the second time. We were married 10 years ago, and we're back together now. But he went because his dad had died, and he went to help his mom, he says, and he doesn't have the energy for me or the kids. But he's so cold, and I don't get it.
So, in other words, he's left you again for his family, or is it for someone else this time?
No, the first time was because we were both young, and he left because we were just young, and he did do a lot of cheating on me back then, and I just found out actually a year ago that he did it 10 years ago. But this time he left because he says that he doesn't have the energy for us with work, and his mom is not doing well since his dad died 7 months ago. So he went to live with his mom and take care of his mom. We do talk every day. We talk several times a day. He's not cheating on me at all. But he's just so cold. He's so angry. He's so cold. And he is seeing a counselor, but I don't understand what the anger comes towards me for. He doesn't deal with our relationship or anything. He says he can't because he hurts when he thinks about it. But he's cold. Like right now, we just got into a fight for no reason. No reason.
Yeah. Well, Kimberly, I'm sorry that puts you in a very difficult position, particularly having to take care of the kids and explain to them what's going on and why. Something odd often happens with people that have been hurt growing up is that they tend to go back to the people that hurt them. And in this case, perhaps with the death of his father, this has triggered a number of emotions, a number of issues in his life that have been reawakened because of unresolved issues with his parents. I can't explain why people do this, but often they will go back and live with or get involved with the very people that may have really caused them, you know, to be hurt and to be wounded. And it's a sign that they've never really resolved that and never really been able to process that. Let me ask you a question. Between his mother and his father, did he have a good relationship with both of them prior to that? Or did he growing up and otherwise maybe have a troubled relationship with one or the other?
I know he had a good relationship. I know his father was very strict. But as far as I'm aware of, he did have a good relationship. I just don't know, like, if there was any bad. I know that the house was very strict. But as far as bad, I'm not really sure. Can his mother be a devil? Yes, she can. She's pretty much, when his father died, pushed me and my kids, which are his kids, out of the whole picture, and I still stood beside him. Yeah. And through the cheating he did and everything, I still stood beside him and want him to come home. And I ask myself, why? Yeah. And it just, now all of a sudden, his mother's made me out to be the bad person, which I don't believe I am whatsoever. So I'm not sure if there was a bad relationship with her.
All right. Well, Kimberly, I think that whenever men detach, you know, you say he gets cold and he sort of shuts down, that's usually because someone has experienced a great deal more hurt and pain in their life than they're really able to process. And I have a pastor mentor friend by the name of John Regier who says 90% of the heart damage that anyone experiences occurs before they get married rather than after. We can step on our spouse's pain, but often that damage was already done there. I think what I would do is I want you, encourage you, please, to seek out a counselor, a Christian counselor, to seek out a pastor where you can begin to talk about how this is affecting you and affecting the children. You know, the Bible tells us that husbands are to love their wives in a sacrificial way. Something is blocking his heart from being able to do that. I can't tell you what it is today. I suspect it has to do with the home that he came from and the death of his father, being strict, perhaps being dominant, being controlling, being a perfectionist, whatever, has really shut him down. But rather than be able to confront that, he's able to confront you instead and blame that. But I don't think that you should do that. Can I just urge you to do something as we wrap this up? And that's to read Psalm 23 every day. Psalm 23 is a promise that God will shepherd your life each and every day, both through your valleys, through the times of abundance, but that he will lead you in the right paths, and he'll give you rest. He'll let you lie down beside still waters and into green pastures. And his goodness and mercy will follow you. I just want you to read that in the morning before you get up, and I want you to read that or pray that back to God in the evening before you go to sleep. I try and make a habit of starting virtually every day by praying that psalm back to God. It's the assurance my life is in God's hands, that he is with me every step of the way, that he's going to show me what's right and what to do, and even in the valley of the shadow, he will never leave me, but will protect me. Just take that as a comfort and turn this situation over to God and for your shepherd to lead you through. And at some point, you need to join your husband in this counseling so that you can begin to discover the issues in his heart that cause him to shut down. My suspicion, he was once a very sympathetic person. Too much pain caused him to flip and go to detachment. But if the hurts in his life can be healed, he could be a sensitive man, a caring man once again to you. Cisco?
Pastor, have you also found that with adults, especially in a situation like this where they've lost a parent, that there can be some confusion over what honoring your father and mother looks like later on in life? I mean, your parents have needs, but you have a family, and you're just sort of wrestling with what you do to honor both.
And certainly when one of our parents loses their mate, we are to do all that we can to support them and care for them, but that does not include the abandonment of our marriage. And the priority of Genesis 2 still takes place. A man shall leave his father and mother and be united to his wife. Not even the death of a parent should undo that priority. The spouse does need to come first. But in very practical ways, they can continue to care for the mother without having to surrender their marriage.
Well, let's go to another caller. This is Chris in Joliet. Hi, Chris. Good evening. You're on with Pastor Bob. What's your question?
Hi, how you doing? I am the oldest of 4 children that grew up in a household of verbal abuse. I am currently married to my wife, who I've been with for 8 years, but been married to her for almost 5 years. We've had some problems in the past prior to our marriage with me and my personality and my mouth and the things that I say and how I react to things. And I started to get better before marriage. We got married, and the first couple years were pretty good. And then I lost a sister in a car accident, and I feel like I have survivor's guilt. And it kind of put me in a bad state of depression for some time. My wife convinced me to seek counseling. I've been going to counseling, and I got to that point where I hit the roadblock where I was very uncomfortable without talking about things, and then I just didn't know where to go from there. And me and her, our relationship was kind of stressed at that point. She moved out last November, and I didn't know what I was supposed to do with myself from November to December. And then I kind of like freaked out, went out drinking one night, got myself in trouble. And then there was a huge blow up, and she threatened to divorce me. A week and a half went by, and she showed up into my life and told me that she changed her mind. She did not want to divorce me, that we should go to marriage counseling, which we had done prior to the event a couple times. And when we went to marriage counseling, the marriage counselor said he recommended I go back to my counselor. The marriage counselor would work with my wife. And when the time was right, he'd bring the two of us back together. She went for approximately a month. And then she was very persistent on bringing me back to marriage counseling. I made it through 3 sit-down sessions, and the 4th one she's threatening to divorce me, and I'm currently sitting in that situation. I have seen and found and realized the things that I've done, and been working very hard to change myself and control myself with homework and things and stuff, and feel very remorseful and sorry for the pain and suffering that I've caused in her heart and soul right now. And I've been trying to prove to her through letters and cards and everything and anything that I can do. I've even gone to agreeing with her for how she feels about me and being angry with me. And at this point, I just don't know what to do with the relationship because I'd like to save my marriage.
Yes. Well, I commend you for your honesty. I commend you for the fact that you're willing to admit you have issues that still need to be resolved, and obviously the death of your sister was extremely traumatic. But I think when it comes to verbal abuse, we're going to talk a little bit more about that later tonight. I don't want to get into that. But here's something I give to men who struggle with their anger and their words. It's from the book of James, and it's in chapter 1, and I'd like to read it to you. It says in verse 19, "My dear brothers, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen." And that means in your marriage that you should spend significant time just listening to your spouse's concerns, her needs, her hurts, without responding to them, without, responding in a negative fashion, but giving her the gift of truly letting her share her heart. We should be slow to speak. And I think for people that have had a verbal abuse issue in their lives, learning not to say what has come into their mind or what they're thinking at the very moment is very important. To be slow to speak and to consider, to give it time to decide whether you want to say this. Maybe you have something strong you want to say. It might be best to wait a day to consider whether you really want to say it or say it in a different manner. And then it says you should be slow to become angry. We all have a choice whether or not we will become angry. It's not something that we are simply a victim of, Chris. It's something that we do have a moment. I think I've read where neurologically we even have a deciding point between giving into anger and following it or restraining ourselves. And we all know when we come to that crossroads. It says, "For man's anger does not bring about the righteous life that God desires." It just simply isn't right to consistently give in to anger. Now here's what I think can be of help particularly. "Therefore get rid of all moral filth." That means confess this to God as a sin. Not just a problem, not just a trait, but it's sin when we use our words to wound and harm others. "The evil that's so prevalent, humbly accept the word planted in you, which can save you." The Word of God, even just memorizing the passage I've read to you, to memorize that, Chris, and before you get angry or let go, just quote that verse to yourself quietly and see whether or not God doesn't come to your help and your assistance in order to give you self-control and restraint. But there's a word in there, humbly, which is all important, humility. Most of the time when men get angry and just spew it or say it, there's pride involved. And they don't want to admit that they're hurting or that they're alone or that they're hungry or that they're tired. They just rather get angry because they can cover the hurt and the other emotions. Let me just encourage you, instead of getting angry with your wife, to say to her, "I'm feeling lonely, I'm feeling tired, I'm feeling hurt right now. Would you help me? Would you pray for me? Would you stay with me through this emotion?" When men are really willing, because anger is a covering emotion, when you really admit what's going on underneath, you often will get sympathy and understanding and concern from your wife, and nobody gets hurt. When you really admit what your need is at that point, they can respond, and you don't have to use anger to stuff it all down or to dismiss it or to hide your true feelings. Humility, it's the trait that can undo, it's the trait that can diffuse anger in people that have a problem with it. Humbly accept the word planted in you, which can save you, Cisco.
Pastor Bob, it sounded like Chris had a lot of times where he was saying, "I'm changing, I'm doing this, I'm doing that." And like there's a lot of pressure there. I almost wonder if simply acknowledging that he needs God to come in and do some of these things would lift some of that burden from him and make things a little easier.
I think you're absolutely right. The fruit of the Spirit can only be given, what we call the fruit of the Spirit, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, self-control, can only come through the indwelling of the Holy Spirit. And that only comes when we invite Jesus to live in our hearts and lives. So ultimately, yeah, that is the answer, because the fruit of the Spirit is exactly the antidote to unrighteous, ungodly anger.
Now, we'll take more of your questions coming up later on in the program. When we return, Pastor Bob will talk about stopping verbal abuse in marriage. We'll be right back.
TLN is a donor-supported station, and programs like you just watched are made possible by viewers like you. To donate, please go to tln.com/donate or call us at 630-801-3857.
Welcome back. As I mentioned at the top of the program, we are live tonight, and in a few minutes, Pastor Bob will be answering more of your questions. The number for you to call is 888-691-1075. You can also email us tonight or anytime at marriage@tln.com. Certainly, one of the most devastating situations in marriage occurs when there's abuse. Physical abuse can never be tolerated. But there's another very damaging kind of abuse that can also destroy a spouse and a marriage. Pastor Bob, what kind of abuse is that?
Well, that's one we've already talked about this evening, Cisco. It is verbal abuse. It is one of the most damaging behaviors in marriage, and stopping it is a very, very important issue for us this evening. I'd like to address it. I say it's one of the most damaging issues in marriage because it leaves scars. It leaves wounds that don't easily heal or go away. The memory of hurtful, vicious words can linger for decades. Let me give a definition of this verbal abuse if I can. It's the deliberate use of words to inflict pain, intimidation, or humiliation on a spouse. And often wounded spouses are at a loss. They're often at a loss. How in the world can I stop this abuse? What do I do? Many feel powerless, helpless, paralyzed in this. Well, let me try and be of help if I can. The first step is to realize it has no place in a marriage. There's never a time you deserve or I deserve to be verbally abused by someone else. Your spouse can express their frustration, their disappointment. They can even bring passion, but they do not need to inflict injury or humiliation or use words in a way that leave scars. Perhaps the most important decision is this: you must decide never to tolerate it again. You're not going to tolerate it. One of my mentors made a general rule of life that we can end up being treated the way we allow others. Now, note, I'm not saying we deserve to be treated that way. I'm only saying if we allow others to mistreat us, we end up often in a situation where we feel helpless or trapped. So deciding I don't deserve this and I won't tolerate it is a key point. The next time it occurs, you need to say with firmness, please stop. I will not accept this any longer. Just please stop. You don't need to say it over and over again. You only need to really say it once, but you need to mean it. If they continue the abuse, verbally speaking, you need to walk out and go to another room. If they continue to follow you, you may need to leave the house or the apartment to physically separate yourself from this abusive situation where the other person has obviously lost control. If they persist beyond that, you may need to call the police in order to protect yourself. Now, I need to make some qualifications and caveats this evening that are so important when we're talking about abuse. In consulting with those who work with people that are verbally abused, they urged me to say this evening, and I'm in full agreement. If you believe your spouse will harm you if you take any or all of these steps, don't take them right now. In other words, if you believe that they could lose control and harm you in some other way, further way, then it's not wise to take these for right now, at that moment, to take these steps. Instead, when you're alone, when they're gone, you need to privately call a domestic abuse shelter for the need for help. This may include calling 911 as well. Don't do it in the presence of your spouse unless you are in immediate danger which you simply could not escape from other than by trying to call. Otherwise, take these steps when you're alone, when you're safe, or when someone else is with you, so that while you're taking these needed steps, your spouse would not react and harm you in some way. So, just to reiterate, you need to decide that it's going to stop depending on its level of severity. You need to take steps that grow in ascending seriousness, all the way to asking them to leave or possibly even calling the police. But only do so when you are alone or you know that you're in a safe situation. It would not be harmed, or the retaliation wouldn't be visited upon you. You know, Ephesians 4:29 says this: "Don't let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their need, that it may benefit those who listen." You know, the Bible couldn't be more clear that there's just no room in marriage, even at a low level, or what we might consider a mildly angry level. There's no place for unwholesome words that tear down rather than build up. And we need to realize that if they're occurring, it needs to stop.
Yeah, and I think it's important to reiterate that verbal abuse is maybe not as obviously physically damaging as physical abuse, but it's every bit as damaging to you psychologically, emotionally, and spiritually, and so that's why it's something that should not have to be tolerated.
In the end, you can truly destroy another person, their heart, their will, their spirit, through verbal abuse. So though it may not leave physical scars, it leaves emotional and spiritual ones that can run very deep. It's a serious issue, and one that if people are experiencing, they need to reach out for help, and right away.
Oh, coming up, we're taking your questions live. As we go to the break, I want to remind you that you'll see two numbers on the screen tonight. One is the number to call to ask Pastor Bob your question on marriage. That number is 888-691-1075. The second number is the number to call to make a donation to support our program. This program can only stay on the air if you, our viewers, will call and make a donation to support this program. That number is 866-868-7720. Every dollar counts. No gift is too small. We'll be right back with your live questions for Pastor Bob in just a few minutes.
TLN is a donor-supported station, and programs like you just watched are made possible by viewers like you. To donate, please go to tln.com/donate or call us at 630-801-3857.
Welcome back to Marriage for Better for Worse. We are live tonight taking your phone calls with your marriage questions, and let's get back to the phones. Let's talk to Maria. She's in Stockton, California. Good evening, Maria. What's your question for Pastor Bob?
Hi, I had a question regarding to Matthew 5:32, when it talks about that whosoever should put away his wife, saving for the cause of fornication. I thought fornication was mainly for people that's not married. I wasn't understanding that part of the scripture. And then my husband has problems with, like, being with other women and stuff. And so I wasn't sure if, like, let's just say I wanted to get a divorce later or something. Well, God bless me. Can he bless me to be in another marriage that's with the Lord, with the Lord? And there was another one in 1 Corinthians 7:15 when it talks about, but if the unbeliever partner leaves, let him do so. In such cases, the remainder, brother or sister, is not morally bound. What does that actually mean? Does that mean that that person can move on eventually? Can you explain those two? And just give me some advice about, like, what do you do when a person is wanting to commit adultery all the time? What does the other person's supposed to do?
All right, Maria, let's start with the scriptures that you raised this evening. In my translation, it says in Matthew 5, but I tell you that anyone who divorces his wife except for marital unfaithfulness causes her to become an adulteress. So I believe that the proper understanding of this context is if someone is committing adultery, that they're unfaithful to their marriage vows. In that case, there is an exception, as it's called, that allows you a divorce in order to protect yourself from further hurt, even from disease and all sorts of other things that happen when someone refuses to change their behavior. In 1 Corinthians 7, there it's talking about whether when a believer is married to an unbeliever and that unbeliever refuses to stay married and walks away, you're no longer bound. I believe the Bible scholars that I've read and studied this rather extensively seem to be in agreement that you are free from the relationship, from the marriage, and thus free to remarry at some future point if it is a believer that you would be entering into a relationship with. In terms of the adultery, you cannot tolerate that. You cannot allow that. You can seek through pastoral counseling, biblical counseling, to try and reconcile the relationship, but that person has to be willing to break that off and to work on the marriage for you to have any hope of seeing it restored. When people come and want to go through pastoral care with myself, I require that they break off contact at that time and commit themselves fully to the reconciliation of their marriage, or I find that many times it's just simply a waste of time. They just go right back to the other person again.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Maria, for your phone call. Let's take another call. This is Lynn in San Francisco. Hi, Lynn. You're on with Pastor Bob. What's your question?
So, if you divorced your husband because, they decided to participate in addictions of substances, but I've always encouraged them and wanting to reconcile, the marriage and everything, and have said specifically that I need you to go to a structured facility to assist yourself even before I left, but it just, things got really physical and verbal, and it just got really bad with our children. So I decided to file the papers, but I'm at the point now where we're both wanting to reconcile, but the individual is saying, I'm not ready to go, to a facility because of just, different situations that they're in regards to work. And I think it's really about pride and perception.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Lynn. It is about pride. The Bible says God opposes the proud, but he gives grace to the humble. That's a quotation from the Proverbs, and it's reiterated in the New Testament, I believe, twice, 2 more times. Real quickly, I think that you've got to insist that your spouse, if they have substance abuse issues, that they enter some type of structured treatment program. They're not going to get better on their own, and it's not going to change. Also, as we've talked about abuse tonight, you have to have a zero-tolerance policy toward it. You can't allow him back in the home, as repentant as he might sound or sincere, until you have gone through some long and extensive counseling over the issue of domestic and physical abuse. Now, quite often, it can be tied to an addiction, and when the addiction issues are resolved, the abuse issues are resolved for the most part. But there you need to have the guidance of someone helping you walk through that knows that's qualified and trained to help you in that. So do not let him back home until he gets treatment, until you've been through a counseling situation with domestic abuse or whatever, and you have the outside assurance of other people that would be a wise thing to do.
All right. Thank you very much, Lynn, for your phone call. Let's take another phone call here. Let's go to Steve in Joliet. Hi, Steve. You're on with Pastor Bob. What's your question?
Hi, Pastor Bob. Your whole theme tonight is just about my life story. I'm in a relationship with a woman down south, and everything was going good. I was still working up here. I go down the weekends and help. I put money in on this place. Well, after I retired, and me and her sister actually, and I'm going to church and praying about this, but we both hate each other, and we just cannot stand each other. And she has taken her sister's side. I stayed down there for a while, and I was so miserable. Now I come back to Joliet, then when we get along, I go back down, and then I'm not there 3 days. We're talking like to each other like we're dogs. We love each other, but how do I stop this? I watched what you said a while ago, James 1, chapter 19, Ephesians, whatever it was. But she's not willing to admit this. None of it's everybody else's fault. She's like a drama queen. And I know I went down with a chip on my shoulder and kept things stirred up. I'm wrong for that. But it's like her sister has come in and took over and dictates whatever happens to that house, and whatever I say and do is wrong.
Okay.
And she goes along with it. Where do I go from here?
Well, if I were you, I wouldn't go down there again anytime soon, because it's apparent that her sister and her have a closer relationship than you do. And here's what I basically have discovered, that people don't change after marriage. You know, what you were beforehand and how people acted don't change because you put a metal ring on someone's finger and say, I do. People are exactly the same person that they were the day before. I think that the two of you are locked into sort of a mutual hurt, self-destructive type of thing, and you need significant time apart. I would just urge you that you might go and find a church, that you would find some place where they teach and preach the Bible, that you might even get involved in a men's group or a small group. I'll tell you why, because you need support, you need friends, you need to be able to understand what faith in Jesus Christ is about and how He can transform your life by placing your faith in Him, and how you can grow in Him. You need to go down that road. You need to work on you and the issues in your heart and life. And when that's all resolved, you might be interested in a very different type of woman than you are right now. And you might find yourself drawn to someone else. You know, as you just continue to grow and develop and heal, you may decide, you know, I want somebody that's going to treat me in a completely different way and has the same type of values as I do in life and spiritual beliefs.
Yeah, thanks for addressing that false belief that if I can just marry her and get her over to my house, oh, this will totally radically change and everything will be just fine.
Not going to happen.
Yeah, it doesn't quite work that way. Well, we're going to take a break here, but we're going to also be taking more of your questions for Pastor Bob live when we return. The number to call to ask a question is 888-691-1075. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Marriage for Better for Worse. Tonight we're taking your live phone calls where Pastor Bob Moeller is answering your marriage questions. Let's take another call. This is Carolyn in Naperville, Illinois. Hi, Carolyn. You're on with Pastor Bob. What's your question?
Hi. My husband left me 3 years ago, and he has not supported me at all financially. He teases me once in a while, takes me out. Doesn't want a divorce. How long do you wait?
Well, Carolyn, first of all, I think he has a legal responsibility and a moral one to be supporting you. And I think you need to insist and demand that. And you need to get the type of legal help or representation that would allow you to get support from him. It's just not right that you be in this situation on your own. At least it appears to be. And so I think one of the things you have to do is, if he's left you, he's got to face the responsibilities of what it means to leave someone that you're married to, and that includes the obligation to support the family or the wife that you left behind. So you're not going to win him back by being soft on that issue or allowing him to get away with that. You know, the fact that he sort of teases you and acts like it, you really need to ask him, you know, look, are you willing to go for counseling? Are you willing to take the steps with me to reconcile this marriage? Because I'm not interested in just playing. I'm not interested in having you sort of dance around the issue. with me. I want your yes to be yes or your no to be no, as the scripture says. So two things. I would not continue to go out with him unless he's willing to go to serious counseling with you, biblical or pastoral counselor, and willing to support you financially. Otherwise, you're just enabling some very bad behavior on his part.
Oh, thank you, Carolyn, for calling in. We have another person on the line. This is Delores in Indiana. Good evening, Delores. What's your question for Pastor Bob?
Well, my question is actually my daughter, she's been married for less than a year, and her husband, I would say, is addicted to pornography. And he's, it's causing a strain in the marriage.
Yes, okay. Has your daughter confronted him about that, Delores?
Excuse me?
Has your daughter confronted him about the pornography?
Yes, she told me that she knew about it before they were married, and she told him, how she felt about it, and he's been sneaking around about it, and she caught him, and they had a church wedding and all this, but he's in the service, so now, and they are going to counseling.
Well, I do believe, Delores, that wives have to have a zero-tolerance policy when it comes to pornography. All the studies show that pornography does two things. It destroys a man's commitment to marriage as an institution. They're no longer interested in marriage, and it destroys their interest in the wife. So if he continues in this pornography, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. It's going to finally destroy the marriage. So before that happens, she needs to draw a very clear line with him. It's good that she's going to counseling, but she needs to say with him, if you continue in this pornography, I cannot live with you. I cannot share you with all the women that you're looking at in cyberspace. One of my definitions of pornography is visual adultery. It's, at least Jesus said, to look at a woman with lust is to commit adultery in your heart on the spiritual level. So she's got to be very strong, very firm about that, and they need to continue to seek help. She cannot share him with the world of pornographic cyberspace. It's just a matter of when their marriage will finally be destroyed.
Pastor Bob, we got an email here at the show on a very similar topic, this idea of pornography and how much it just destroys relationships and trust. I want to share this email with you now. It's from a woman named Shaniqua, and she writes in, I'm a 24-year-old woman. My engagement recently ended. I went to a Respect conference and felt convicted for how I treated my ex-fiancé. We reconciled after a month apart, but after only a week, he told me he doesn't know if he wants to be married. He said he's still involved in porn and is busy with schoolwork and can't give the relationship much time. He still wants to continue dating, but I don't know if this is wise. I definitely want to be married. Should I continue with him or cut things off for a bit or permanently?
I can only ask you the question, how much do you wish to suffer in your life? How much do you wish to go through emotional agony and disappointment and hurt? You thankfully have discovered this problem prior to marriage, and so you have a way out. Someone that is involved in pornography loves pornography more than he loves you. And that's going to be the case before you get married and after you get married. I think the prudent thing to do at this point is to break off that relationship. If he is serious about changing his life, he will go and get the help he needs, enter into the accountability he needs, be clean and sober, so to speak, for a long, long, long period of time. But there's no guarantee that's all going to happen. But please, you are more value to God, you are more value to others than to enter into this type of destructive relationship. That there are, groups that you can reach out to, that he can reach out to for the kind of help you need, but you're in no way ready to get married. This is a huge red flag, and you need to back off of that for now.
Well, if you have a marriage question and you would like to email us, you can at any time. Our email address is very simple, marriage@tln.com. And you can also send us your stories of healing and marriage reconciliation. We always enjoy getting those as well. There are a couple of options for you to support this program financially, and we'd like to remind you of those again. It takes $100,000 per year to keep Marriage for Better for Worse on the air. So if you'd like to come on board as a financial partner, even if it's a small gift, there is no gift too small to keep this ministry on the air. There are 3 ways. Let's see. You can call, and the number is 868-868-7720. It's 866-868-7720. Or you can go online. It's very convenient to give a financial gift online at our website. It's tln.com. tln.com, and there you would just choose the marriage page and click on the red donate button. Very convenient. Just click on the donate button. You can also, if you'd like to send a check, you can do that. You can send us a check in the mail. Just address it to TLN/marriage, 2880 Vision Court, Aurora, Illinois, 60506. And Pastor Bob, we talked earlier this evening about the importance of those monthly donors, those friends who are willing to come on, even if it's $25, just to come on regularly for that support.
Absolutely. And if we could get 400 people to do that at $25 a month, we'd meet our needs. Tonight, I'm just, again, hoping that we could have 10, perhaps 20 people when this program ends in a few minutes. Call the number or go to the website and become that kind of partner.
All right. Thank you, friends. We look forward to seeing you again next week on Marriage for Better for Worse. God bless.
Thank you for watching. The program you just watched is made possible by viewers like you. We would like to thank you for your continued support. To donate, please go to tln.com/donate or call us at 630-801-3857.